Hey, my name is Shelly and this is my channel, Shell Space. So, today's video is going to be a bit of a different video. It's going to be a manga recommendation video. A little bit of back history about me. I've been reading manga for like 20 years. I'm not tooting my own horn or patting myself on the back. It's just I have a lot of history with manga and I can make a lot of different manga recommendations. In the wake of like One Piece and Berserk being huge and Attack on Titan and Spy Family all being super massive right now, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a bit of a recommendation videos for booktubers who are a little unfamiliar with manga besides like the big names. So with each recommendation I'm going to make, I will tell if there's how many volumes in English are there, if there's an anime adaptation, where you can see the anime adaptation, like on Netflix or Crunchyroll, and also kind of maybe like a recommendation of like fantasy books that are currently popular and beloved. So let's get started. So the first recommendation is actually kind of the manga that inspired me to make this video, and that is Frieren, Beyond the Journey's End. So this is a fairly new and an ongoing manga. Currently there are 9 volumes in English. The 10th volume I think is going to be coming out in early 2024, and there is a new anime adaptation that is currently airing right now, which is amazing. Like, the art for this anime is just beautiful. Oh, and the anime is on Crunchyroll. So what's this about? So Frieren, I keep wanting to say Frieren is an elf, and she was a part of this like band of people that saved the world from like this demon king. And our story takes place after they completed their quest, their 10 long year quest, and they kind of like, you know, everybody celebrating the fact that they won and the Demon Kings, you know, ended. And then the band splits up and Frieren just goes her own way. And she makes a promise to one of the members of the crew, the band, I guess. And she promises to return back in 50 years to watch this like meteor shower. And he kind of laughs and he's just like, okay, I'll see you in 50 years, because he's human and she's an elf. So she returns after 50 years, after doing whatever, only to come back and he's an old man. And this is in the synopsis of the book, so it's not giving anything away, but the guy passes away and she has been left stricken with how quickly humans age and how little they live and how much she really didn't spend to getting to know them. And she had a lot of regret, wishing that she spent more time getting to know the people that are in her life. And then she meets up with another one of her band members who is a really old man who's adopted a young girl, and he basically tricks her into taking this young girl as her mage apprentice. So the story kind of takes place from there. Although it is an adventure and a bit of an action, it's mostly a look at relationships, as like how we treat each other, how we love each other, how we, you know, remember the people that we love and the things that we do for them. And, you know, Frieren is kind of learning to be human and living amongst the humans, even though her life is so much like vaster, and like I think she's like 1,000 years old and humans only live to like 80. So for her, that's a very minimal time. With that said, it is an incredibly touching, heartwarming story, sad at times, funny at times. Like, Frieren is kind of funny. Although she's like very robotic, she's also kind of a little clumsy and has trouble waking up in the morning. And so if you're kind of looking for that fantasy feel-good feel, like Legends and Lattes, I highly recommend this book. Currently, the first volume is actually sold out where I live in Canada, so I actually don't own a copy, but you can find it like on Kindle or Kobo or whatever, and maybe in other places it's available. So I highly recommend Frieren if you're looking for like character growth, mixed with like fantasy, mixed with like cozy, mixed with a little bit of emotional, and obviously the art is beautiful. So yes, Frieren, really good one. So the next recommendation I would like to give is Noragami Stray God. This is a shonen manga. Currently there are 2 seasons of anime. You can watch the anime on Crunchyroll, and there are 26 volumes in English. And there's also omnibuses of the manga. So if you want to get the omnibuses, which are a little bit cheaper than buying 3 volumes, you know what I mean. So this manga is like a shonen manga, but it's not a shonen battle manga. So if you're not interested in shonen battle like me, but you still kind of like the genre a little bit, this is a good recommendation. This is about Yato, who is a god, and he's like a forgotten warrior god. So basically he needs like worshippers to worship him in order to have power, but now he has no worshippers, and he's poor and homeless, and he's left with doing mundane jobs to like get money and to get worshippers. In the middle of one of his mundane tasks, he crossed paths with Hiroi, who is a middle school student, and one thing leads to another, and her life gets tangled up into his life, and this big huge world where there are these like creatures that are kind of like spirits that feed off of like negative energy and negative emotions, such as like depression and sadness. And they start off small, and then they get bigger and bigger. And then there's also like dead souls that can be turned into weapons. So there's a lot of things going on in this world. But what I love about this book is the characters. The characters are what really bring me in. Like, Hiroi is just like, you know, not like the typical high school girl. She is obsessed with wrestling, like to the point where it takes up a lot of her personality. And she's very cheerful, lovable, but very determined, very stubborn. Yato is lazy, rude, just kind of like, you know, if you like that whole like grump and sunshine relationship, you definitely have it here. And then we meet more characters. I don't want to give too much away, but we meet more characters. The cast gets bigger, and the story evolves. It becomes something, it starts off something very minimal, and then gets darker and bigger, and we kind of dive deep into Yato's past, which is not the best. It's a very bloody, sad past. So this manga is actually written by 2 mangakas, 2 female mangakas, and they have done such a great job with this manga. The artwork is just spectacular. The storyline is great. The banter, it's funny, it's sad, it's touching, it's action-packed, it's scary. There's a bit of a romance, but not kind of. I mean, it's a romance between a 14-year-old girl and an immortal god, which is, you know, it's manga. The anime is pretty good. I think there's only 2 seasons, and I think that only covers like the first 7 volumes of the manga. So if you're interested in that, it's on Crunchyroll. It's pretty good. And I think it follows pretty closely with the manga. It does deter a little bit towards the end because the manga is still ongoing and the anime stopped a couple of years ago. And hopefully there'll be a 3rd season, but I wouldn't hold my breath or cross my toes because with anime sometimes that just doesn't happen. Noragami, good action-packed, fun manga. Okay, so the next manga recommendation I would like to make is actually, I think it's labeled as a shoujo, but I feel like maybe it's a little bit more mature than a shoujo. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. And it is My Happy Marriage. This actually started as a light novel, and then it became so popular they made a manga, and then Netflix actually made an anime. So if you want to watch the anime, which is beautiful, it's up on Netflix right now. So in this world, superpowers are inherited through bloodlines. So if you can control the wind, all the people in your family can control the wind. And depending on your power and how strong it is, the stronger the power, the higher position your family is in like the hierarchy of society. Our story begins with Mayo, who actually has no powers at all, but she is from this prestigious family. And basically she's just like the black sheep, the dirty secret that her family wants to keep hidden. So this is a bit of like a Cinderella story, but with a twist. And Mayo is basically set up an arranged marriage to this, like, I think he's like a general. who is considered to be like mean and cruel and just like a reclusive that nobody wants to be involved with, but his family does have power. So because of this, her parents arranged this marriage for him to be her to be married to this general, and her life begins with that. And she actually wants to go because her family is just, they're the worst. Like, they're the worst freaking family. I felt so bad for her. So when she meets her new husband, she actually discovers that not everything is what it seems, and he's not what it seems, and she is not what she seems. So the story kind of begins with that. The art is beautiful. It is a very touching story, and there's a lot of emphasis on mental health and self-love and the importance of being around people who actually appreciate you and love you for you. So yeah, there's a lot of heavy topics in this manga, but honestly, I think for fans who like kind of like the fantasy romance, will definitely enjoy this manga. Currently, I think that there's 5 volumes in English, and there is a 12-episode season on Netflix, and I think it got greenlit for a second season. So if you're interested, now's the time to check it out. So the next recommendation is for those like monster loving, graphic, like manga lovers. Okay, so this is Kaiju number 8. Currently there are 9 volumes in English, and there's going to be an anime in 2024. I think it's spring or April 2024. So this is like the perfect time to get into this manga. So in this world, they're basically living in like a society with like Godzilla-like creatures, like demon-like creatures, which are kaiju. We are following Kafka, who is actually like, I think he's in his late 30s or mid 30s. So he's an older like character for manga standards. All of his life he wanted to join this defense force that basically is in charge of fighting these kaiju monsters. But he keeps failing the trials. Not only he can't get into this defense force, his childhood best friend is like the best defense force fighter. She is like the poster child of the defense force. Because as children, they made this promise that they would fight the kaiju together, and he wants to fulfill his promise to his best friend. So basically, our story begins with, I think he's on the cleaning task. So basically, his job is to clean up after the kaiju mess. So like after they're dead, his job is to clean up the corpses and all that gross stuff. And I'm not going to say what, but one thing leads to another, and he ends up on the defense force. But he's old, and he's not very good, but he's got a little bit of a special ability that makes him an asset to the defense force. This manga is hilarious. Like, I freaking love Kafka so much. He's so funny, and he's got like a sidekick who like idolizes him for no reason at all. And then there's like this spunky like teenage girl who's like on his team as well, and she's like an upcoming star, but she's got a horrible personality. And you know, on top of that, his like childhood best friend is also in the mix as well. So if you like that found family, the unlikely hero with dark humor, and actually no, it's more like silly humor sometimes, but there's also like dark humor, a little bit of horror. I generally don't lean towards this type of manga, but I couldn't stop myself from flipping the pages, wanting to read more, wanting to see what happened. So yeah, I highly recommend this. For people who like One Punch Man and My Hero Academia, this is probably like a good combination of both of them. So yeah, Kaiju number 8. Okay, the next manga recommendation is actually the only one on the list that I haven't read, but I watched the anime, and that is Neo Genesis Evangelion. This is like a 90s darling. Like, this was everywhere in the 90s. Like, people who loved anime, they watched this anime because it is so good. So basically, in this world, there is these really things called angels, and they are not like, you know, the typical like nice angels. They're bad angels that want to like destroy the whole world. Because of that, there's like this like defense force called Neo, I think it's called Neo. Yeah, I think it's called Neo. So basically, it's giant robots. But they need teenagers, for some reason, to be able to pilot these robots. And only a certain type of teenager can pilot these robots. And so we're following our main character, and I can't remember his name at the moment because I forgot to write it down, but he's like this young high schooler. And his father actually is like the head top guy of this like defense force. So he is brought in because they now have a new robot for him to use, and he's basically brought into this world, and we are kind of like learning about this world through his eyes. And there is two other pilots, Ray, I remember her name, who is like a really quiet girl, and I can't remember the other one, who is like really bitchy, but there's like reasons why. And then we meet some more characters, and it's a really good action-packed anime and manga. So what makes this manga and anime different from other mecha anime is the relationships and like the mental health rep. Like every single character in this anime has got issues galore. Not to mention, they make the threat of the angels like real. Like it wreaks havoc on like Japan basically. And not everybody is safe. It's not like one of those animes where everybody gets saved. It's like things happen, and it's like realistic to the point where like people die and buildings get destroyed and society is basically collapsing, and they have to kind of deal with that. So there are 14 volumes of the manga in English and 1 season and 3 movies. I'm editing here, and I decided to look into the movies because I kind of remember that there was a lot of information about them, so I just thought I'd do a quick recap. So basically, there's 7 movies. The first 2 movies, Revival of Evangelion, came out in 1997, the first being Death and Rebirth in 1997, End of Evangelion in also 1997. They were basically recaps of the anime, and they were made because the anime didn't have a proper ending, but the movies also didn't have a proper ending, so people were kind of upset about that. Fast forward 10 years later, and they decided to release another movie called Rebuild of Evangelion. The first movie coming out in 2007 was You Are Not Alone. The second coming out in 2009, You Are Not Alone Advanced. The third coming out in 2012, You Cannot Redo. And the fourth and final one coming out in 2021, Thrice Upon Time. These are a recap of the anime, plus there's an actual ending. So if you want to check out the 4 movies of Rebuild Evangelion, that's probably your best bet. The movies are on Netflix, and you can get the 14 volumes in English. So if you want a manga or anime with like a really dark theme, but it's like mecha, action-packed, and really dives into characters, check out Evangelion. Okay, so my next recommendation is probably more of a well-known recommendation, but I feel like it hasn't gotten much love lately, especially with everybody discovering One Piece and Berserk and a lot of like older manga. I feel like this manga needs to make a comeback, and that is Inuyasha by Rumiko Takahashi. I freaking love this manga. This was one of the first mangas like I fell in love with as a kid. So this is a isekai, but done well. Basically, we're following Kagome. Kagome's family runs this shrine, and she kind of has like a little bit of a spiritual abilities, but not much. And something happens, and she falls down this like old well, and she wakes up to find herself in ancient Japan. In this time, yokai like run amok, and if people don't know, yokai are like Japanese demons, and they run amok. And she stumbles upon Inuyasha, who is basically like strapped to this tree, and she frees him. So Kagome accidentally finds this like weird trinket, and somehow this trinket gets broken and scattered throughout the whole land. It's a magical jewel, and I think if you collect them all, it grants like immense powers to whoever owns it. So the two of them are tasked with traveling the land and finding all the bits and shards of this jewel. But what makes this awesome is because it is such a big manga series. There's 56 volumes in English, and you can now get the omnibuses, which I have right here. All 56 volumes have been adapted into anime, so there's all the anime seasons that you can watch, plus movies that don't really have anything to do with plot, but it involves our characters. So if you're interested in that, all the seasons are on Netflix, and all of the volumes are in English. Yeah, like I just adore this series. Like, this is probably one of my favorite manga series of all time. I just love it. Plus, Rumiko Takashi is one of my favorite mangakas. She also is the author of Ranma Half, which is another awesome manga. This actually came before Inuyasha, so this is her 90s manga. And Ranma is about our character Ranma, who falls into this pool, and basically he has the ability to change into a girl anytime he gets wet. And he returns to Japan after falling into this pool, and he has to meet up with his fiance to get married, even though he's a teenager, and it's just ridiculous. It's funny, it's action-packed, there's a lot of perverted humor in this, and then we meet more characters that have fallen in this pool, including his father, I think, who turned into a panda, and I think there's like a girl that turns into a pig, or a guy that turns into a pig, and then a girl that turns into, I can't remember what it is. But we're meeting more characters, and it's just silly, nonsensical, and it is a long season, and I think there's an anime, and I think it's adapted to all of the seasons, but I think it's only on Crunchyroll. So if you're interested in that. Also, by the same author is Maison Ikkoku. So this is not a fantasy. This is a slice of life about what's his name? Goda, who is basically a ronin. In modern Japan, being a ronin is basically means you fail to pass your college entry test and you're jobless. So he lives in this like rundown boarding house with a bunch of crazy tenants, and then he meets this new manager, Kyoko, who is actually a young widower, and it's just silliness and shenanigans. I don't know how many volumes are, but there's 10 omnibuses right now that are complete, and they're all in English. And there is an anime of this as well, and I think a Japanese live action. So if you're interested, there's lots of resources for this one. That was my manga recommendation video. Please let me know if you like this and you want to get more recommendations. I've got lots. So I will be more than willing to make another video if people are enjoying this. I'm really active on Instagram and Facebook, so you can always find me there. As always, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to, and have a fantastic day. Bye.